Hi friends, it's Angela here for ellenhudson.com, and thank you so much for stopping by to visit today. I'm excited you're here. Spring is just around the corner, and at the end of this week, the new Essentials by Ellen release will be live in the shop, ready to serve for all your spring card making needs. This is a smaller release, and today I'm going to show you the essential eggs, which are available as nesting dies, stitching dies, as well as hot foil stamps. As far as our color palette goes, today I'm using one that you will see more of this week for sure, which is curated by the lovely and very talented Heather Meeson. We've got some Concord and Ninth Sprout and Aqua Sky, as well as Catherine Pooler inks in Matcha, Hot Tub, and Stone Blue. You'll also see a couple of other goodies from this month's release, including the adorable Ears to You sentiment stamp set that I'll use on both projects. I'm not going to be using all of these ink pads today, but I am going to be doing some coloring, so I also made a quick little swatch card with my collection of sketch markers and Copics with colors that match the color palette closely. Starting with my first project, we're going to be making a shape card that features some really simple stitching. I'm starting here with an egg die cut, which is smaller than an A2 panel, and you can see that I've used one of the egg stitching dies to cut my holes all the way around the perimeter. After we stitch the egg, we'll mount it on the larger egg shape card. So I've got one of the large essential egg dies here and an A2 card base. And I'm going to place that die slightly over the left edge so that I keep the hinge intact while it runs through my die cutting machine. I've got 5 colors of DMC embroidery floss that I want to feature in roughly equal amounts. So before I thread up my needle, I counted all of those holes on the egg die cut. There were about 50 of them. Then flipped it over and made little tick marks every 10 holes with a pencil. These marks served as my start and stop guides for each color. The other thing I needed to do before I got going with my embroidery floss was to cut another little egg with the smallest stitching die out of the middle so I could create a radiating effect with the embroidery floss. Don't worry, nobody's going to see this part. We're going to cover it up with a sentiment. Now I like threading my needle using a needle threader, and if you do a lot of stitching cards or paper embroidery and you don't have one of these, I highly recommend it. It'll make your life a lot easier and you'll be able to spend more time stitching and less time trying to thread your needles. As you're about to see, I'm going in with one color of embroidery floss at a time, again stitching about 10 holes around the perimeter for each color. There's really nothing fancy about this, so I'm going to speed up the video a bit, otherwise we will be here all day. While we're watching, one tip I wanted to share is that you may notice after you finish your stitching that you have 1 or 2 strands of floss that are a little bit looser than the others. If this happens, don't worry at all. We're going to mount the stitched egg onto the card base with foam tape, and when you do that you can lightly pull any of the looser bits of floss before laying the foam tape down on top. As I come to my last color, I'm going to tie it off on the back side, then I'll get in there with my sharp scissors and trim the thread, and we're done with that part. Moving on, I've already stamped some images from the new Sweet Spring stamp set, and at this point I wasn't entirely sure which ones I was going to use on each of my projects, so I just colored a bunch with my Copics and sketch markers. As usual, my coloring is nothing fancy, and having a little coordinating swatch card that I made earlier made this process super quick and easy. The stamp set does have coordinating dies available, so after I was finished with the coloring, I cut them out and set them aside because I still had some stamping to do. This is the Ears to You sentiment stamp that I showed earlier, which is full of great spring and Easter themed greetings. I'm going to stamp the Hello Spring twice in nice crisp black ink, then I'll cut it out with a small Essential Circles die. Now I'm ready to play with adding a few of my little colored images, which I'll hold in place with some temporary tape just so I can secure them from the back. I've also added a bit of foam tape onto the stitch panel to mount my sentiment circle on top of, and once that's secure, I'll just peel away that temporary tape from the stamped images. And finally, I've got foam tape all over the back of that egg, and all I need to do is pop it on the egg card base. Ta-da! Moving on to the second project. This time we're starting with a regular A2 card base and a white A2 card panel trimmed to 3.5 by 4 3/4 of an inch. This time we'll use the Essential Egg hot foil stamps, but first I want to make sure that I've got room for a sentiment below. So again, I'm grabbing the Ears to Use stamp set and lining up the hippity hoppity happy Easter to make sure it fits. It does. So I'll secure a piece of champagne foil in place with some post-it tape. Let that do its thing on my foiling machine. And after this reveal, you will see that we've got a lovely egg frame. We need to make this into a window, so I've just grabbed one slightly smaller egg die, placed it inside the frame, and ran it through my die cutting machine. As usual, I found that a little bit of post-it tape residue was left on my panel after that foiling, so I gave it a quick rub off with a sand eraser, and then it was time to do some stamping. So for this, I used the spots on the new from the new Elegant Eggs stamp set to put a few in the bottom right in Sprout ink and then a few in the top left in Matcha. I did get a bit of stamping on my foiled frame, so to prevent this from smearing onto the cardstock where I did not want it, I just went in there with a cloth and blotted it really gently. All right, now I'm just playing with the arrangement of my little scene here, but decided at this point that it would look a lot better if there was some color behind the bunny. So to do this, I just grabbed a blending brush and very quickly created a lightly blended layer with Aqua Sky ink to place behind. Before I started to assemble the pieces, I also needed to stamp the sentiment underneath. So into the MISTI I went again, picked that nice crisp black ink and stamped that sentiment. All right, we're finally ready to stick things together. So starting with my critters, again, I'll hold those in place with some temporary tape, cover the back in foam tape, and then remove all of that backing paper, then lay that right over that blue ink blended background. From there, I mounted it onto my white A2 card base with some liquid glue. And there we go, we've got our 2 cards, but wait, we need some embellishments. Sparkling clear sequins really felt like the way to go here, so I added a couple around the sentiment on the egg card and then a few in the top and bottom corners of the bunny card. And we're done! Like I said, these 3 essential egg products, the nesting dies, the stitching dies, and the hot foil stamps, will all be live in the Ellen Hudson shop this Friday, along with the rest of this fun new release. I can't wait for you to see it, so be sure to set your alarm, and in the meantime, stay tuned here on the Ellen Hudson blog and the Ellen Hudson Instagram feed for more product reveals. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you back here next time. Bye!